Hey guys, welcome back to Tennis 360, the podcast where we talk about all things tennis. My name's Anthony Hirsch.
And I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
Welcome back to the podcast. So we're going to go over the Doha 1000 event that went down on the WTA side, as well as the 500 event that happened in Rotterdam. Jannik Sinner wins his 12th title. He goes 12-0 on the season so far. Beats Alex de Minaur in what I thought was a really good performance, actually, from de Minaur, but just not good enough for Sinner once again. 7-0 now for Sinner in that head-to-head. And he's just playing incredible. 50 matches won in a row. And he's up to a career high of world number 3. Do you think Sinner just keeps on rising, keeps this going to the top, all the way to the top spot?
Ooh, I think there's still a good point gap between 3 and 1 from what I understand. So
yeah, it's like 1,500 points or so.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess it'll depend a little bit about these upcoming Masters tournaments. Obviously, Djokovic is able to play in the US this year, which he wasn't able to last year. So that gives him an opportunity to gain a couple more points on what he currently has. So that'll make things a little bit trickier. But, you know, I see him continuing to chip away and continuing to be a threat for the number 2 and number 1 spot. And I think a lot of it will not only depend on him and his form and kind of what's going on his side of the net, but also a little bit on what's going on the other side of the net with Alcaraz and Djokovic and kind of, Alcaraz is defending points at Indian Wells. That's a Masters top tournament. And as I said, Djokovic is playing in the US for the first time at these Masters tournaments. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how those two guys perform and kind of where the points square up towards the end of the US swing. But I think that Sinner, pretty much since post US Open last year, has been the man to beat on the tour and has had, clearly the most success and threatened the most when it comes to, kind of being the leader at the moment when it comes to ATP side. So I don't know how to answer the question in a complete answer, but
it's a tough one
because I'm not ready to answer it yet. Could he get to world number 1 by the end of this year? I don't know. I don't know if that makes the question any easier. I don't know yet. I need more time.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know how to answer the question either because it's very hard to see if Jannik's going to be able to sustain this level. He actually became the first person since Leighton Hewitt to win the title that happened right after he won his first major, which is a very impressive stat for Jannik.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that he's going to sustain his level perhaps better than, for example, say Alcaraz won Wimbledon, and then I think he kind of lost his form a little bit. I think Jannik is going to sustain his form better than that, but also I think Djokovic, when he's playing with motivation, with a kind of will for kind of revenge, not just in the fact that Jannik has won the Australian Open, but in the fact that Jannik has beaten him 3 out of the last 4 times that they've played, 4 out of the last 5. You count their doubles rubber as well. I think Novak's going to be hungry for revenge, and is Jannik on the way to number 1? Everybody, I think a lot of people know that I'm very, very high on Sinner. I probably wouldn't predict it for the near term, just because I do think Djokovic is still at the very top of the game. He's still going to be winning a lot. Like you said, he has points to add as well in Indian Wells, Miami. We'll see where else he plays. But we'll see. I hope that Jannik sustains this form. It definitely has to remind you, I think, a little bit of when Novak broke through in 2011. He won Davis Cup for Serbia in 2010. And then he kind of went on a bit of a tear at the start of 2011. So I don't know. I don't know either, but I would probably predict no in the short term. But I am very, very excited to see where he goes. And at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if he does, which I would not have said 2 or 3 months ago, which I think is the important thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. It was a good final. De Minaur, I thought, did everything right. He was playing aggressive right on top of the baseline. He was coming to net. He was trying to slice and dice all of this. It was very, very close between the two. But I felt like it was just, for me, I felt like it was an odd error every now and again from de Minaur. And also whenever de Minaur would come to net, probably about 20 times in the match, he was running around a backhand on the ad side, and he had a forehand inside out and came to net, and Sinner passed him backhand cross court. That happened, I swear it happened at least 10 or 15 times in that match, that exact point. And it just felt like de Minaur probably could have been a little bit smarter with his shot choices coming into net, et cetera, but also Sinner has just been so impressive. So I think de Minaur played just about as well as he could have, but I think Sinner is just too good in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's a 7-0 is a pretty demoralizing head-to-head for de Minaur, but yeah, I mean, look, tennis scoring is kind of mind-blowing. I think there was only a 3-point difference in this match, and those points can, when you look back at, for example, what you had mentioned about kind of approaching the net, always hitting it to Sinner's backhand, it became a very predictable tactic. And I'm not sure that that necessarily would have been the tactic that he discussed with his coach. I think that that's probably the play pattern that he's more comfortable with, and in the way that he hits his forehand, which is a little bit flatter. He doesn't seem to feel super comfortable coming kind of around the side of the ball. So that's why he's hitting it to Sinner's backhand. And I also felt like Sinner was spraying a few more errors on his forehand side. So again, that would have been the better side to try to approach the net from, or at least try to mix it up in that approach game, because I thought he played solidly at the net, de Minaur, and it wasn't a terrible net percentage point win. But yeah, he left the door open too many times by just signaling what he was going to do and being unwilling to kind of change up that tactic. And 2 or 3 points here and there with kind of a willingness to do something maybe you're a little bit uncomfortable with could have been the difference in a match like this. But then again, you do give Sinner the edge to be able to problem solve and come alive in the big moments when he needed to, especially off the back of his experience in Australia. So yeah, I can't really fault de Minaur too much for that performance. I mean, a super solid week. He's backing up a super solid start to the year. And he's proving that he's not just a speed demon. He's not just moving well, but he's executing well. He's constructing points well. He's serving with confidence, and he's looking like he's more sure of himself than he ever has been. So, hats off to him for that, and just about falling short here to somebody who's, truly the best performer on the tour this year. So nothing to be ashamed about that.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing to be ashamed about for de Minaur. He's at world number 9 now, and he's just been on a tear of it. Beat Djokovic earlier in the year in the United Cup, and he's just been playing so well. Just such kind of even in this match, I felt like he was constantly getting the ball deep from both wings. Sinner is actually able to attack the ball much more consistently off the forehand, especially off the backhand. de Minaur can't do anything but neutralize off of that shot. I thought that that played a big role in the match. de Minaur actually hit a few unforced errors at crucial moments trying to attack off the backhand coming to net. But very little to say about de Minaur, because he really did play one of his best matches. It's just running against Jannik in his current form is going to be too much, I think. So I think that it was a great match, high level. If you saw the scoreline, saw it was 7-5, 6-4, you probably would have not even guessed that it was as close as it was. But it really was a very, very good match from the side of de Minaur. He did about as much as he could have done. And I was glad with both performances. Both have a career high ranking. And then that Jannik just keeps on winning. And then also going on in Rotterdam, I just wanted to go back to another match that happened earlier in the week that I thought was actually pretty important, which was pretty important for Auger-Aliassime. He played, I thought, his best match since 2022. He had 3 match points up on Rublev, 3 consecutive, and he couldn't convert. Rublev came back. Do you think we're ever going to get the Auger-Aliassime that ended 2022 in his way, or do you have warning alerts up, or do you just think that he's just not going to be able to find it again?
I mean, it's so tough because he's still relatively young. You know, and he, as you say, he finished the year well in 2022, but I don't think we've seen his best tennis since the beginning of 2021, I want to say, that kind of period. So he's lacking confidence. And I think that's just the biggest challenge with tennis players, is when you go this kind of length of time without kind of being a big name contender or a name that's discussed as truly, you know, top 10 worthy and a title contender. I do think that starts to eat away at that confidence within you and your ability to, convert match points, win against players who are ranked higher than you, and put out, you know, solid performances week in, week out. You know, we're used to him doing well on indoor hard courts, but I think until we see Felix producing strong results outside of that environment and surface, it's hard to really credibly think of him as someone as a true threat on the ATP tour at the moment, because you gotta have more than one I don't know, you know, strength in your wheelhouse and more than one place where you're able to dominate. And I mean, maybe it's because maybe it's sort of a question of like Canadian tennis as a whole. It's like he's obviously not kind of where he was before. Shapovalov isn't where he was before. Leila Fernandez is, we'll talk about her some more, but again, she's reached higher heights than where she's been, you know, the last 18 months or so. And I just wonder if it's something of the, that kind of mentality of like, you know, what happens when you stumble, what happens when you get an injury, how do you come back? Who are the people that you might look at as motivation? We also see Milos Raonic continuing to retire and have a tough time. You know, it's sort of like an inner confidence and belief that like no matter what, you're meant to be here. And again, like I don't like talking about Zverev, but it's another reason why Zverev's comeback from his ankle injury was so impressive, because he still expressed the mentality of like, I am meant to be here. And I think that's a little bit what's missing about Felix, is like, it doesn't feel like he even thinks I'm meant to be here. It doesn't feel that in his bones in the same way that someone like Zverev does and shares publicly that he does. So I don't know. I mean, there's so many factors here. It's hard when you're not inside somebody's mind, but I'm fearful that we won't see that kind of top 10 potential from Felix consistently on the tour.
I don't know. I disagree a little bit, to be honest. I think I think that FA after his loss, for example, after he lost, he said something like you know, it was a disappointing loss, but I'm ready to come back next week, and I'm excited about the level I've been able to bring. I think it was the best level that he brought out since his 16-match win streak to end 2022. I think I think he performed. You know, sometimes his weaknesses are, you know, kind of return of serve, just consistently. You know, he goes big on his shots, but not just spraying unforced errors, but consistently getting a lot of good depth on it. You know, for the backhand to be working as well. I think that Felix, everything in this match was working. I've seen that happen before, where you know, he can have weaknesses in matches week in, week out, but when he's really streaky, when he's finding the form, it's easy for him to kind of run with it a little bit. And I thought we saw that in this match. I think that for me, he had one bad year last year, and it's not good to have one bad year. But like you said, he's still young, so I do expect that we're going to see something good from Felix again. The sad example that you named is Raonic, and I agree with you. That's been disappointing. He was 2 set points up on Sinner in their match, and then he had to retire. He blasted a forehand winner inside in. He was like, you know what, my body just can't let me play. He was like, the level of his body just wasn't there for him. But you know, I think Canadian tennis has some light in the tunnel. You know, well, Shapo is going to get on tennis TV with a highlight reel every now and again. Hopefully he can actually win a match or two as well. But
you know. I don't think it's necessarily a reflection of Canadian tennis. I just think sometimes, you know, those like breakout leaders, those people that are really kind of a shining example that can come from your country, psychologically can kind of make a bit of a difference. I don't know why I think that, but it's like there's so much high pedigree when you think about German tennis, or when you think about players kind of looking up to Andy Murray from British tennis, and kind of how that helps to pull through the next kind of generation of guys. Obviously, British tennis hasn't had a men's singles champion in a long time, so that theory doesn't necessarily hold. But I just think it's tough when you have kind of like your whole federation, especially on the men's side, is struggling a little bit. Vasek Pospisil struggled a lot with injury. Raonic struggled a lot with injury. Shapovalov, same thing. And so it's sort of like, it's obviously not contagious, but that sort of energy can seep into a camp. And obviously they also don't spend huge amounts of time together, but I kind of felt like Felix had a good upbeat energy about him when Canada won the Davis Cup, and they had some good momentum in that swing. And so I do think sort of the people around you, your friends around you, your compatriots, sort of can influence a little bit of behavior, sort of mentality at times. And it certainly doesn't help when kind of everybody around you is also struggling as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think because tennis is such a global sport as well. You hold on to the people that you kind of a lot of these people grew up in juniors playing against these guys who are with them and stuff like that. So I think there's something to that. You certainly see that with the American guys.
Totally.
And I think Delray Beach Open final this week, Fritz played against Tommy Paul. Last week, Tommy Paul beat Marcos Giron in the final. That was actually the first All-American final since 2022, since mid-2022. And now we've had 2 in a row. So there's something about the American guys that they're picking each other up. I think that's true about a lot of sports. Matteo Berrettini doing everything he did for Italy really kind of swung the door open.
You have those trailblazers, and that energy can be a little bit contagious. I think Breakpoint sort of showed a little bit of insight into that from Tommy Paul's perspective of like, I used to be the guy when we were juniors, and now Fritz is ahead of me, Tiafoe's ahead of me, and now randomly Shelton's ahead of me, and all of this stuff. And so I do think it can be a motivating factor when you see people around you doing really well. That can, help build your confidence, give you someone to chase, someone that you like is a friend of yours, who you've, as you say, you've grown up with, you've beaten before. You're like, okay, if this guy's there, like I can be there too, type of thing. And I do think it's harder when you come from a country where either there's nobody who, who's been there, done that, or there's everybody else around you is also struggling. Then, the pressure's kind of rotating between who's going to take the baton and the highest ranked one, and who's got the stress from that. So I think the American guys are a perfect example at the moment of when you have one breakthrough, you often have a couple, because they bring a couple of those people with them. So that's my feelings on that.
Yeah. Well, I think that was well said, and I think it's true. Delray Beach Open. What we were just saying about Fritz and Paul. Fritz beat Paul 6-2, 6-3. And I watched that earlier today. I'm just gonna tell it how it is. I didn't think it was a very high level final, to be honest. Wasn't the highest level. It was very windy out there. I didn't think it allowed both players to play, but Tommy Paul was way off his game in the first set. I think he was serving 46% of his first serves in throughout that first set, and it wasn't the highest level, but I thought that Fritz did enough. And I think the things that have bing exciting to me about Taylor is that he's been very impressive in the spots that are generally considered weak. I thought the thing that really turned it around today was actually the defense from Fritz. He was actually really good at defensively getting good depth on the balls and getting them back. And I thought that was a very impressive thing from Fritz. I mean, serving great, forehand great. The backhand I thought was working very well as well. So he even came to net a few times, and that was working. So it kind of continues off from the Australian Open, where he beat Tsitsipas in 4 sets, and then he lost to Djokovic in 4 sets. But he did something against Djokovic that no one had ever done before, which is win the first 15 break points of the match. So. Actually, speaking of the U.S. guys, do you think Taylor Fritz is the best of the Americans at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's the most consistent. He's showing up week in, week out at these tournaments. He's only the second guy to defend his title in Delray. It's not always easy to defend a 250, especially when you've got guys like fellow compatriots in the draw who know your game pretty well, who you've come up against, that can be a little tough. And yeah, I mean, I think his ranking shows he is where he is because he's consistent. It was really important for him to have a good Grand Slam moment. He's had 2 good Grand Slam moments back to back. He had a good solid US Open last year, lost to Djokovic, solid Australian Open, lost to Djokovic. Again, nothing. He had put in a much better performance this year in this Australian Open, much more to be proud of in that match against Djokovic. But again, you kind of are always like, it's Djokovic, like
Yeah.
tough ask. And I think Tommy Paul gave a little bit of insight last week in the Dallas Open. One of his games got delayed or matches got delayed, and he said he was sitting around all day. I think it was his match against Shelton. And he kind of was like, I was losing my mind. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, do I go for a walk? Do I practice? Like, what do I do? And this match, if you guys didn't follow, it was supposed to be played on Sunday. It got rained out in Florida, massive rainstorm. So they played it Monday at noon. And I just wonder if he was in this thing of like, I'm losing my mind. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm super nervous. He won the title last week in Dallas. He probably thought this is a huge moment for me to get my 3rd title, to really push up in the rankings and really start chasing Taylor. He had a lot that probably was going through the mind in the extra 24 hours that he had to rest. And I felt like in that first set, he wasn't super focused. He was messing around with the chair umpire. He was complaining about some stuff. And yeah, the conditions were probably bothering him. And I just felt like he was letting a lot of things kind of distract him mentally, because I think that is the barrier for Tommy Paul. It's like, we've known his game is so sweet. It's so good. Yeah. He moves so well. His fitness looks so much better than it used to. But I do think the final hurdle for him is the mental game and being able, to be clinical in these types of big moments and to deal with the pressure situations. And I think Fritz has impressed me over the last year or 18 months in his ability to be American number 1, to handle kind of pressure moments, come through criticism where he had a couple of bad Grand Slam runs, a couple of bad losses, last year at the AO to Alexei Popyrin early on. I just think he's got a better approach psychologically at the moment, and that's what's separating him from the rest of the American guys. Yeah, it's the confidence piece. Yeah. Because also it's worth mentioning that Francis Tiafoe is struggling at the moment. Yeah. He is just not able to get a couple of good runs together post US Open really last year. I mean, it's been pretty disappointing. Ever since he broke the top 10 right before Wimbledon, it's been pretty disappointing. And I think he would say the same thing. And I kind of wonder what's going on with him too. Again, and it feels a little bit like a mental thing of like, do you have your ducks in a row? Like, are you saying yes to the right partnership deals and events? Like, are you focused off and on the court? He made a coaching change. He has stuff switched up in his camp. I think Paul Annacone for Taylor Fritz is an awesome, awesome coach, high-level coach, and is a difference maker. And that's why he's in the situation that he's in.
Yeah, it's all about the coaches. It takes a team to win an event. It's not just one player out there. That's really true. You hear it all the time for professional players. There's a reason they thank their team after every match, because it's them who make like the ins and outs and are working with them every day, perfecting every part of their game, have that crutch that are always with you. It's a problem with a guy like Holger Rune now, where everything is switching up and it's a mess off court. You're not really sure what's going on, and and his mom is like in the box and shouting at him. You're like not really sure what's going on off the court. And I think Fritz needs that. I think that's a good point, for sure.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning that Fritz is now 6-0 in finals since 2022. And that's a really awesome stat. There aren't that many players who have that level of kind of clinical stats in finals. And it just shows, again, like in those pressure cooker moments when he needs to deliver, he's doing it, and that's a huge stat.
Yeah, and it's a winning kind of mentality that I think we've seen from him. He wants to get to the top. He's pushing himself in every possible way to get to the top, and it's a level of fearlessness in the tight moments that I think we've seen from him time and time again. That's been very impressive. And 6-0 in finals is crazy, but even just thinking about the fact that he's won 7 titles and he's turned 26 in October, like he's going to win a lot more of them. So.
Right.
It's been very impressive from Taylor. I'm very excited for the fact that he's winning so much. I'm glad that he's back in this best form again. Even last year, he won Delray Beach, he won Atlanta, he won a couple of titles last year. So 7 titles, it's already more than Marty Fish, for example. Marty Fish won 6 titles. He had a pretty bad finals record, to be honest. He was 6-14. But anyway, Taylor Fritz has already won more than Fish, for example. He's a lot of titles, which is going to be very, very good for him. I think he has the kind of mentality to, when he's playing against like Novak at the Australian Open or Rafa at Wimbledon, it doesn't look like he feels like he shouldn't be out there. And I think that confidence level is highly underestimated. And, that's the fun thing about tennis. I think you can talk about forehands, you can talk about backhands. Novak Djokovic had a quote: "Everybody can hit good forehands, everybody can hit good backhands." Not everybody. It's about the mental side of tennis. Not everybody has the perfect mental game. I think what's very, fun about tennis is in those tight moments, like you said, Sinner de Minaur was 7-5, 6-4, only 3 points separated them. And it was that kind of moment where in those moments, it was Jannik Sinner was like, yeah, I'm the more confident one. And that's what makes you attracted. That's what makes you attracted to certain players and want to root for them, is the fact that, they, that you see their personality, what their mentality is in the big moments. And of course it is about having the big serve and having all of that at an elite level. But, I think that is, that is an underrated part of tennis, and it's not all tennis is. It's not even close, but it might be the main aspect. It is the main aspect of tennis.
Yeah, and I do think Fritz is, as you said, displayed the most hunger and willingness out of the American guys to continue trying to solve the puzzle and put himself amongst the pigeons in terms of contenders for big titles, being inside the top 10. I mean, to do that consistently now, for a couple of years, it's super impressive. And it's not easy to be willing to switch up what you're doing despite getting a beat down multiple times from one person, to then show up against Djokovic, someone who's literally not given you an inch before, and take a set. And as you say, save the first 15 break points. He is willing to go out there and do something different. He bets on himself. He continues to go back to the drawing board. And I think that's a mindset that the other Americans on the tour who are knocking on the door but haven't quite been able to do that at a consistent level, that's the difference. I think it's just that willingness to go a little extra mile, do a little something different, be confident in all of your weapons and all parts of your game, continuing to work on his net game and implementing that in big final moments, even if he's uncomfortable. I think that's a difference maker for being in or out of the top 10. And that's why he is where he is today.
Yeah, I agree. And then Buenos Aires 250 event as well. We had Diaz Costa, who actually went up 2-1 on Fritz at the Australian Open in the first round.
Right.
And Fritz was like, who is this guy? He's playing incredible. He goes back on the clay in the golden swing and he gets it done.
Yeah.
He beats Nicholas Jarry 6-3, 6-4. Yeah. 2 back-to-back weeks, by the way, where 2 guys win their first ATP title. That's winning 5 matches after previously not having won 5 matches, period, in main draw matches.
I saw some tweet that was how was he even ranked inside the top 100 with so few wins under his belt? But I guess it was the tournaments he was playing. But he was also a wild card here. I think last week the players came through qualifying. Here he's come from a wild card situation. First tour title for him. I admit, before Australian Open this year, I was I don't know this guy. He plays good tennis though, and clearly, he had a good run, and he beat a fellow Argentinian in the semifinals. I haven't seen enough of him to really know his game and kind of be able to explain what his strong suits are per se, and like what his weaknesses are. I don't think he's a huge power player, but yeah, he's tricky to play against and certainly moves very well. That's what I've noticed so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know enough about him to speak about it, but it's a first ATP title, and he beat Nicolas Jarry, who just beat Alcaraz. So I think we could talk about that Jarry Alcaraz match, and Alcaraz. I'll be honest. I'm not crazy worried about Alcaraz even still.
Yeah,
to be honest, it's like whatever. I don't. I think that a guy who's 20 years old and has had the results that he has, is pretty obvious that you should give him a little bit of time to struggle. Everybody has some kind of struggles.
Right.
But it is true that he is in lesser form than he was. I mean, he's 88% win rate on clay since July 2021. So losing in the semifinals here, obviously something is going on. Jarry played a fantastic match, pretty much perfect. In every way, and but Alcaraz, I thought he was standing so far behind the baseline for most of the match, which was really strange. And Alcaraz, I was rewatching his match against Jarry in Rio last year. He played him in the semifinals of Rio, and it wasn't a perfect match from Alcaraz, but I felt like Alcaraz was at least I felt like Carlos was at least, he started further behind the baseline, but as the rallies went on, he found ways to get further inside the court. But I feel like Alcaraz isn't playing his best tennis is when he's way behind the baseline, because that's just not how he plays. No. He needs to be aggressive and go for it. And a few times I did see him being aggressive and going for it and hitting errors, and I was just like, so I just really don't know what's going on. Maybe it's a confidence thing. And, the serve was also a bit all over the place. On break point in the second set, when he got broken at 3-4, he stood way out near the doubles alley, which is usually you carve out that angle to go out wide. He hits it down the tee right into the forehand of Jarry, who just crushes it for a winner because it's a kick serve. Right to the forehand, he just crushes it. He's like, okay. And then the match is over. So I don't really know. Those are a few weak things that I noticed from the side of Alcaraz. And, but like I said, I give him time to improve, but it is important to, I think, to notice that he is on a little bit of a lack of form at the moment. But I will also end by saying Rio, Indian Wells, Miami tournaments, he's all played really well in the past. I hope he can build up some confidence in those events, and I would be far from shocked if he builds up those confidence and starts getting much better form.
Right. Yeah, I think my theory is, like, he went through an extremely, extremely stressful period last summer. We saw the nerve collapse happen in Paris against Djokovic, where he just couldn't perform. Nerves got in the way. Then he is like determined to put that right, prove he can play well, not just against Djokovic, but play well on grass. Huge run at Queens, huge run at Wimbledon, beats Novak in 5. Just huge mental strain, pressure in that period of time. Then we all know how quickly the tour runs from Wimbledon into the US swing. Another huge battle with Djokovic in Cincinnati on hard court, super draining, energy sucking, not confidence sucking, but just, oof, like this guy is going to keep battling me, and this is really tough. Then, doesn't have a bad run at the US Open, obviously can't defend his title, really hard thing to do. Medvedev, I thought, played a perfect match against him. Medvedev, again, isn't somebody that I would underestimate or necessarily always point to Alcaraz as like, you should be beating Medvedev and these guys. Medvedev's a Grand Slam champion too, and a perfectly solid player who played a great match against Alcaraz. And
one of the best performances I've seen the last 3 years from Medvedev.
Exactly. And I felt like that was also, Alcaraz kind of responded at one point in the third, but you felt like that was also very mentally taxing. And then after the US Open, he admits, like, I'm exhausted. I'm really tired. My body's really tired, but I also reckon his mentals were really tired. And he just, admitted that he needs to find a better way to manage his season so that he can perform better in the second half of the year, especially towards the end as things tail off. It's not like he had a terrible, ATP finals. He did fine. But you just kind of felt like he's hanging on just to get to the end of the year. And then he didn't play any warm-up tournaments, probably because he felt like, I need to rest. I'm so freaking exhausted. I started last year with an injury. I don't want to start this year with an injury. I need to chill out. He probably has wanted to make some adjustments or changes to parts of his game, and hasn't really had too much lead up and warm up time to work on those things and implement those things. And again, it's not like he had a terrible run at the Australian Open. Zverev was someone that a lot of people picked as a dark horse, as someone that could be a contender for this title. And he didn't play a perfect Australian Open, but I mean, he almost made the final. It's not like he was that far away either. So I don't look at that result and think, oh my God, Alcaraz was terrible. He shouldn't be losing to Zverev. Again, like, Zverev is a name that's been in a Grand Slam final before, has been a contender. Like, this person is an impressive player. You can't expect a 20-year-old to always have the answers in these big game moments and think that they're always an out-and-out favorite. And so I think there's so much context behind the current performances that are happening. It's like he's played, this is his second or third tournament of the year. Like, give the guy a break. Like, one of them was a Grand Slam, best of five, super high pressure, super high intensity type of situation. And now people are pointing fingers. They're like, oh, Sinner's going to catch him. Sinner's the better younger player, this, and that. And, Sinner's made more improvements than Alcaraz. And I'm sure all of that is weighing heavy on the Alcaraz mind. That's just like, shit, I just need to prove myself in something. And all of a sudden the pressure starts mounting and it becomes more difficult than it was this time last year. And so that's why I'm not like sitting here super concerned, because I don't feel like anything's happened to his game per se. I just think it's the pieces that he admitted to last year. If he needs to learn to manage his season better, his in-game match management, not totally emptying the tank between matches every single time he's out on the court, learning to pace himself, learning to pick his moments a little better. And then also us as fans giving him the leeway and the opportunity to kind of do what Sinner did, of like, all right, maybe this kid needs to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. He needs to work on some things. We've been saying it from the start. The serve needs work. The shot selection needs work. So it's just kind of like, I don't expect him at this age to win huge titles week in, week out, or even 250 titles week in, week out. I just think that's an unrealistic expectation. He made a semifinal here. Jarry's a top 10 player, plays well on clay. Like, I mean, tough luck sometimes. He's not Novak Djokovic yet. And he needs to learn to manage the situation when he's not playing his best. And that takes time and experience on the tour. This is his 3rd year on the tour. I just say relax.
Yeah, I agree. And he had, it's not everything, but he admits to his errors too, which is such an important kind of aspect of it, that he's so self-aware of where he's going wrong all the time. He's trying to improve in real time. And that's the whole thing of it. He's 20 years old. He's trying to improve in real time. He's improved so quickly up to this point as well. At 20 years old, whenever he's had different errors, like you mentioned, the serve has been a problem. The shot selection has been a problem. And he's been constantly improving on it and saying that he has stuff to work on. I think the disconnect really comes from the fact that he plays such a low percentage game. He might play the most physical low percentage game I've ever seen a top player ever attempt to have, to be honest. I would go ahead and say that. And I think that game is not always going to be perfect. Sometimes it might get ugly, because he's not going to be able to figure out when to use the right tools, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if he's going to be able to get a Sinner-like serve. Sinner is also just taller than Alcaraz, to Carlos. So it's going to be harder for him to get that serve like Jannik. And I think, to be honest, it's completely unclear who's going to be the better of the two players. But I would be the first person to say that Jannik has not caught up to Carlos. Jannik has not caught up to Carlos, in my opinion. I would be the first one to say Carlos has won 78% of his matches throughout his career. He's won 4 Masters, 2 majors on 2 different surfaces, one with the longest match time that anybody had ever done in a major. The other one, he beat Berrettini, then Rune, then Medvedev, then Djokovic. He beat Djokovic in 5 sets. That hadn't happened on center court in 10 years. And, I mean, we know what Alcaraz can play. I think it's so easy to simplify when this is a guy who's just struggling a little bit. Like you said, this guy reached the quarterfinals of Australia, semifinals in New York, and everybody's saying that it's over. Like, what are we even talking about here? It seems like it's the perfect example of recency bias for when inevitably he wins Madrid or Indian Wells or, and then he starts going on a rampage again. And it's like the perfect example of like, okay. And then we were like, oh, okay, we shouldn't have worried at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people talk about recency bias. It's good for Carlos to struggle. I will stand by that. It's good for him to struggle. It's good for Jannik to struggle because then they get better. And Jannik's gotten better, so will Carlos, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I agree. Well said.
Now, do you want to go on to the Doha 1000 event as well? That happened on the WTA side. It was the biggest event that happened this week. And Swiatek got the win over Rybakina in straight sets. She wins Doha for the 3rd time straight. No one had ever won 3 times, just period. And it was a very, very good performance from Swiatek. She was down 4-1, a double break in the first set, and then she found her way to climb back into the match. And she was constantly having great comebacks. Rybakina definitely, in my opinion, didn't have the best mental performance at all. Not even the best performance at all. Actually, the stat at the end of the match shows, I don't know if this is accurate, but this is the stat from Sky Sports, 15 winners to 41 unforced errors for Rybakina. Which is just a bit gutting. Swiatek broke 5 times in the match, and Rybakina also only hit 3 aces in the match, so it wasn't Rybakina's best performance, but Swiatek mentally was so impressive throughout. And, I thought it was actually the backhand in the tight moments that was the most important. She was down 7-6, Rybakina serving in the first set breaker. And then Swiatek won all of the next 3 points with a backhand winner to get the set. And or she set up the set point with the backhand winner. And with a backhand, that was very strong. And, I thought that was the thing that really changed the match because Rybakina was trying to attack the backhand of Swiatek, I think, but it didn't matter. Swiatek just so solid, fighting like always, and just some great comebacks throughout this match. What did you think of the match?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just 3 years in a row for Swiatek. I think it's 22 sets in a row as well. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I think the conditions and the surface really suits Swiatek. We talked a little bit about it last week, but when the surface does play a little bit slower, this is where Swiatek is the ultra dominant player. We see it here. We saw it in Cancun last year. We see it in the clay season pretty much every year. She just that's her best court condition, slow. So suited her really well. It was also windy and rainy and a little cold in Doha, and I think that was impacting the Rybakina serve and just, as you say, mental performance. Maybe also a little tired, coming off of a title last week at a WTA 500. So, I don't know quite how many matches in a row, but 7 or 8 matches in a row, 2 finals, week in, week out. Tall order for Rybakina. And I also think, Swiatek didn't have to play her semifinal against Pliskova. So she did have an extra day of rest. And when we're comparing, as we say, kind of 7 or 8 matches in a row for Rybakina, who's played every day pretty much for the last 2 weeks, versus a player who did get an extra 24 hours of rest, makes a difference. Especially in those moments where we're talking about converting break points, converting leads, just being mentally focused enough. I don't even think like the tiredness necessarily for these level of athletes really impacts the physical that much. I think it is more of the mental exhaustion and focus, and that 24 hours of extra sleep and rest and downtime and fun time can make a huge difference when coming into a final. And so just a couple, contextual factors that I think matter in this match. But I think it was another final that WTA fans wanted to see. Earlier in the year, we got to see Rybakina Sabalenka, and now we get to see Rybakina Swiatek, and kind of see that title get passed around between the three of them. I still think them plus Goff are the players to beat on the women's side, although Goff didn't have an amazing performance this week. That happens. I think Iga is demonstrating that experience portion of having been a number one now for 92 weeks, something like that. Putting herself in situations where only other names like Serena Williams are alongside her with, winning 2 or 3 titles at one event. She is hitting another level of focus and discipline and willingness to continue to insert her name in the conversation, even when people think, oh, it's not going to be as good of a year for her. I don't know where people get that stuff from, just because she lost early in Australia. It's like, I don't think Australia is her best slam.
No.
I don't. And I'd be surprised if we actually even see her win Australia. I don't think that's her, place to thrive and shine. But certainly at Indian Wells, where she's going to be defending her title, I fancy her. No, sorry, it's not defending her title. Rybakina is defending her title, but I think Indian Wells will be another place where Swiatek will play well. We've got another Masters tournament in Dubai coming up this week. And so, yeah, I mean, she's just, when she's on her game, she's just so impressive. And other than the serve being confusing to me as to how it's as effective as it is, I mean, she served really well yesterday in the final. Even in windy conditions, first serve percentage was really high, good placement, just a solid first serve. I think sometimes as tennis fans or tennis players, we can forget, especially on the WTA side, you don't necessarily need a Sabalenka or Rybakina level serve bombing stuff down all the time to be a good and effective WTA player. And I think Swiatek demonstrates that perfectly. Technique-wise, her first serve, I feel like there's more potential to reach there, and she's still super young. But I mean, her movement is so elite. She's in a level of her own when it comes to the athleticism and the movement and the fitness portion, in my opinion. And I don't even think Goff is as good as Swiatek is when it comes to the movement portion of things and the way that she attacks the ball and turns defense into attack, sees angles, sees the court, sees the strategy. I mean, it's so hard to fault her and find flaws in her performances when she's, on her best level.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I think I like what you said about the big serving, because I think that Iga is a perfect example. You don't need that. I think Ash Barty was also another example that you don't need the biggest serve or the biggest shots. As long as you have the impressive athleticism of Iga that really allows her to kind of like you said, turn points from defense into offense, but also off the return of serve. I feel like a lot of the times the way she kind of she moves in order to barely people ever ace her. She at least gets the racket on the ball, and the way that she can just constantly get the ball low and get good depth and width off the return just by just by moving in a very athletically impressive way. I think that it's just Iga's on another level. I really think it's the mental side of Iga that even if not all her shots are working great, she can figure it out.
Yeah.
Even if not the serve is not working that well, or if her backhand or her forehand, whatever it is, it's not always working perfectly. It wasn't in the first set of their match. After about 1-1 in the second set, they played, I think, a 4-deuce game, and then Iga ran away with the match. But up to that point, it was very close. And I felt like it wasn't all working well, but in an hour and a half long first set, the longest of Iga's career, she's mentally just the better player, and that made the difference. Like what we were saying earlier, it's the mental side, it's the confidence. And yeah, I don't know why anybody would ever see her loss at the Australian Open and say that she's not gonna, that seems insane. I didn't see anybody saying that, but if I saw anybody saying that, I would have been angrily Twitter replying she's still one of the best players in the world. She came off a win streak in the Australian Open.
No, I don't think she gets the respect that she necessarily deserves sometimes. I don't know why. It's people's eyes light up around Sabalenka and Rybakina, and I get it. They are the more maybe exciting players, especially with Sabalenka hitting forehand speeds on par with the average of men's forehand speeds and kind of things like that grab headlines. But, you know, back when Swiatek took over the number one ranking from Ash Barty, I think a lot of people just wanted to lay into her and be like, this person's lucky that Barty retired. She would have never earned it on her own, blah, blah, blah. That's a useless argument. And not only is that useless in the sense of Barty's retired and there's nothing we can compare it to, but it's also like, look at what she has done since then and has completely solidified her position as world number one, has earned every opportunity she's gotten from that perspective. And she put herself in the situation to take over the number one ranking in the first place by being at number two. And so she is such a solid competitor, fighter. She's also really well spoken in the press, is a thoughtful and meaningful individual, cares about the women's game and progressing that on a deeper level. And yeah, I think if there's an opportunity to give just like a appreciation shout out for Swiatek and kind of try to encourage people to get on side with her, then this would be it. I understand, like, again, also from a personality perspective, she's a little quirky. Like, you know, she likes reading books and building Lego and listens to AC/DC and maybe is a little retro for the Gen Z kids. I don't know. But she's not boring to watch. That is for sure. She is not boring to watch. And she puts her heart and soul into every single performance. And I think sometimes people don't give her the benefit of the doubt in that sense and like don't even watch her necessarily. I feel like I get that sense. So I don't know. To me, she's a little bit of an underloved name, especially from an American tennis perspective. Everybody loves the Rybakina, and part of that maybe is also just like style and beauty and just, I don't know, things like that are superficial in women's tennis. And yeah, she's such a solid player. I love watching her.
Yeah, big shout out to Iga. I mean, she's been 92 weeks at number one, and she's crazy. 22. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. Barely. I mean, listen, some people don't even reach the top, the top like 20 or 30 in the world by the time they're 22, and exactly. They will a lot later. She's been 92 weeks at number one. That's about 2 years. So yeah, shout out to Iga. I like watching her as well. I also like watching Novak play. They actually really remind me of each other, to be honest. The way they can kind of just like consistently get like effective like width and depth their shots, change direction so impressively. Like athletically, they often do the open stance backhand on the slide, reaching for a ball with a two-hander. And it's like, I don't know. I enjoy watching her. And also, yeah, I mean, I think winning 38 matches in a row after Ash Barty retired would have put an end to those arguments. But and also she was what 21? She only just started reaching her peak. It's like, what are people even talking about? So shout out.
A couple other good things to mention from that 1,000 event. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Shout out to Swiatek.
You're good.
Pliskova, another really, really good run, especially off the back of winning her first title in 4 years.
Across two continents.
Yeah, I mean, crazy. She flew the night of winning the title in Transylvania, arrived in the morning, played her match in the evening. And although she wasn't able to make it through the week physically, probably smart, she is playing in Dubai this week, so she's not hurt. She was just exhausted, and fair enough. But she put in a very, very impressive performance against a more impressive Osaka this week, which I thought was really fun to see Osaka play a good level, consistent level, because the week prior she didn't put in a good performance, and it was a little disappointing. Thought she served well. Thought she hit some really good ground strokes, played some good tennis, but Pliskova, again, just showed that she's tough to beat. She's tough to beat when she's on her best game, and that's why she's a former world number one.
Yeah, 7-6, 7-6. They played a tight match in Brisbane as well. That was like
Yeah.
one of the better matches I thought so far this year.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was very, very close. Osaka in the quarterfinals of a WTA 1000, back where she belongs. I did think her ball striking was incredibly impressive. It was very, very close. Osaka actually went up in early break in both sets to go up 2-0 in both sets. Then Pliskova was able to get back. She led up both breaks with kind of poor backhand errors into the net. I thought having probably a more reliable first serve would have done her better, and maybe playing the tight moments a little bit better. She only made, I think, 60% of first serves in throughout the match. So those were a few things that just slight ways to improve for Osaka. But listen, only came back her 4th event back. I think Naomi is just, she's improving a lot, hard hitting. And even though it was 2 sets, I thought it was a fantastic match. I got to catch a little bit of it. And, Pliskova, she was in Romania and Europe. And then a day later, she goes to West Asia to play WTA 1000. Now she has another WTA 1000 back-to-back. And now she's got 2 more for the Sunshine Double coming in just a few weeks' time.
Crazy.
So good luck. Good luck to Pliskova with the ridiculous WTA schedule we have.
Yeah.
But,
random shout out. I did get this book from Ben Rothenberg, Naomi Osaka's book. I haven't finished it yet, but I am a good chunk of the way through. And I think if you guys are interested in Naomi, but also just like WTA game in general, this book has been a really good read so far and pretty revealing on the Osaka story and like where her game style comes from, kind of what her life was like growing up. And the reason why I bring that up is because when I was watching that match, I was like, geez, this woman hits a big ball. And she hits so beautifully too. I mean, just like the top spin, the leg drive, the action on the kind of follow through that snap part, it's beautiful. And it sounds like from reading this book, it's been something that's like constantly been in the making for her, and has always been an asset for her. And I mean, we knew that like from the years prior, but I thought it did a really good job of kind of illustrating what makes Naomi. So if you guys like tennis books, I'd recommend giving that one a read.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I haven't read that, but that sounds interesting. About Osaka.
For sure.
But yeah, quarterfinals. We'll see how Osaka can keep improving. Ostapenko is 14-0 on the season, except when she plays against Victoria Azarenka. So she's 0-3 against Azarenka. And the draws aren't helping either, because I mean, it's not like they played like the Australian Open final or something. They keep playing before the quarterfinals. So the draws are just like draws are evil. And the handshake was just insane. Between the two, Ostapenko, just for whatever reason, just like holds out the racket like they did during the COVID times, whatever, where you like kind of hit rackets with each other. And then Azarenka is like, get out of my way. I don't get out of my way. It just goes to the umpire and she's like, whatever. It was actually closer, that match, than the scoreline suggested, but I don't know what it is with that match, but like Ostapenko hit 1 ace to 8 double faults, which is not a stat. 6 in the first set as well. Vika just so good on the serve. I don't know what it is. Vika always has her best serving performances against Ostapenko. She had 6 aces to just the one of Ostapenko. In Australia, it was 16-2. In Brisbane, it was 11-3, the ace differential. She made 76% of her first serves in. And I don't know, Azarenka is just like not scared of Ostapenko's pace. Like it doesn't matter how much pace is coming back at her. She's just so good to keep coming back with more depth and good pace off of both wings. Just so good at counterpunching. She's redirecting the ball so beautifully throughout the court. And it's kind of like Swiatek. She's just such a solid athlete that she can turn defense into offense so beautifully. And there's something about getting into position for the ball, even when you're forced to hit it from tough positions, that it's those little kind of minuscule details in how good of an athlete you are that you can really create a much like kind of lower ball over the net. And it's really that's the more important part of professional tennis, right? I think rather than hitting a very impressive forehand down the line winner that's 100 miles per hour. I think the more important aspect that's a little bit more impressive is when pace is coming back at you or you're in a tough spot to still hit an effective low shot over the court or get good depth on it, get good width. That's the part on it that really differentiates itself from college tennis or from, the lowest tiers of the tour. That's when things get really good, when they're consistent point in, point out, shot in, shot out. I'm making them very effective, good shots. Because everybody can hit, or not everybody, but a lot of people can hit, a very impressive shot every now and again. But then they usually follow it up with 10 unforced errors. And especially they're not elite in every shot that they hit, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So
yeah,
I think
absolutely. I agree.
So I think that
Azarenka
is just so impressive in that way.
Yeah, I think she is known for being one of the best defenders and redirectors on the tour. And Ostapenko is beating a dead horse, just trying to win that way. I think that just plays into the Azarenka blueprint. She's like, I love pace. Give it to me all day long. I mean, I don't have to do that much. She works with that so well because, as you say, she's such a good mover. So you sort of think with Ostapenko, like, when are you gonna mix it up and like try a little bit of a different tactic and like, I don't know, maybe give Azarenka a little bit more height and spin and push her back a bit more and exhibit some patience. But that's not the Ostapenko game, and she plays one way and one way only, and it either works or it doesn't. And quick note on the handshake, because it's silly. Unless she was sick with something that warranted her saying, I'm not going to shake your hand, which even in that sense is just like stupid, because you guys touch the same balls and like you've literally, like, come on. And I don't think that was the case. And I love Ostapenko. I love her fieriness. I love that she's just a savage. But at the same time, Vika is one of the veterans on tour, one of the nicest, most experienced players on tour, often makes times for younger players, and just does her part in general to represent the WTA on a high level consistently throughout her career. And I do think she deserves more respect than that, than just holding out your racket for a racket tap at an end of a match that you got done in. Sorry. And it's, for me, that was a bit like, okay, bro, just like grow up. Like, that's the one part of tennis we all know, is the handshake comes at the end of the match. Yes, we had issues with it over the last 18 months with what's going on in Russia and those players. There's a reason behind that. There's a political reason behind that. There's no reason behind this other than just like being immature and petty. And I think tennis thrives off of good sportsmanship at the end of the day. I don't think that means you have to play tennis a certain type of way, and it needs, like, in the game itself, do whatever the hell you want, within the limit. But at the end of the match, you shake hands. That to me is like important, and I don't like seeing that type of behavior. I think it's shitty, and I would encourage her not to do that again.
And then for the power ranking segment of the podcast, we've got the top 10 change due to the tournaments we're mentioning: Doha, Rotterdam, Delray Beach, etc., etc. I've got center Medvedev, Djokovic, and then I've got Zverev, and then de Minaur as my top 5. You've got Alcaraz and Zverev in there as well. I've got Zverev in there, but you still have Alcaraz at number 4. You still got the hope that he can kind of keep that going.
Yeah, like, I don't think he played terribly this week. I mean, yes, he didn't make the final and win the title. He still made the semis. He lost to a good player. Didn't play his best tennis, but I think he's going to play himself into form. He's playing a 500 event this week where he'll be the top seed. He'll fancy himself. Then I think I'll make a better evaluation next week based off of that performance. I want to see a couple of good battles from him before I shift around his spot in the top 4.
And then with like an early loss in Rio, maybe then he probably shifts down a few spots, something like that. I want de Minaur with number 5 because I've been so impressed with Demon. It was everything I was saying earlier. I thought he played like a top 5 player. The good thing about tennis and having a high level guy like Jannik Sinner is he forces everybody that he's playing to have to match his level if they want any kind of chance to to win against him. That's the thing about tennis. And de Minaur matched his level. He was playing like a top 5 level for good chunks of that match. And, de Minaur's been consistent recently, had a good performance in Australia, lost a very close 5-set match to Rublev there. And I just feel like he's really improved so many parts of his game. So I want to give the nod to Demon. Hurkacz and Fritz fell off 2 spots, but it's just because actually, if I was to do it again, I would actually put Fritz above Hurkacz for number 6 with the title in Delray Beach. But it was just because Demon climbing in. But yeah, Demon War. Then I'd have Fritz, then Hurkacz, then I have Rublev there at 8, and then I have Hugo and Bear climbing in due to the Marseille victory last week as well. He's been so impressive, just such hard hitting from a young guy, 5-0 in finals. And then I have Tommy Paul at number 10 as well. Honorable mentions to Alcaraz, who I do think will find his form again, whether it's in Rio. I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be during the Sunshine Double, actually, where I always think that Alcaraz likes the slower hard courts. I think that potentially is one of his best surfaces, and I think that those are going to be good tournaments for him throughout his career. But and also to Dimitrov, who is probably going to climb back into my top 10 power rankings. But if you want to get to yours for the ATP as well.
I mean, very similar. I could throw Bear in my list as well. And I could also throw Paul in my list. 2 good weeks, one in Dallas, gets to a final in Delray. Hadchanov hasn't done much this week, so I guess he's still just kind of on my radar. He's going to be playing in the Middle East, I think, in Qatar this coming week alongside Andrei Rublev. He's still just someone to watch. You know, I think he's dangerous now that he's healthy again. And I don't know. I didn't want to throw him out of my top 10, so that's why he's in there.
Okay, nice. Yeah. And then on the women's side, I think we are very similar as well. We have Sabalenka, then we have Swiatek, Rybakina. You have Goff. I have Ostapenko there at number 4. I still think Ostapenko is very impressive this year. I mean, I really think Azarenka is just a bad matchup for her. I think it's like 5-0 now. And then also after that, I got Collins and Fernandez jumping into my power rankings. Danielle Collins has been so impressive. She lost a close match to Swiatek in Australia. And then she lost a close match to Rybakina, I believe in Abu Dhabi, which was 3 sets. I think she was up a set and a break on Rybakina. And, Danielle Collins, she's another one of these kind of Ostapenko types where, and like Georgie, where she goes kind of all or nothing, sometimes, but when it's working, it's working. And it's been pretty consistent recently. She retired at the end of, or she announced her retirement at the end of her match against Swiatek. So I guess that is, that's going to be a farewell season for her, but she's still in such a good form that I'm a little bit sad to see that. Leylah Fernandez, I mean, she was on a tear at the end of last year. She won like 14 of 15 matches. She won Billie Jean King Cup, I should say, for Canada. And, poor performance against Alicia Parks at the Australian Open, but she's right back at it. So talented, so skillful, so many tools in her toolbox, and just such a good fighter out there. The serve is looking better. And, everything is working well. And I'm just so happy to see Leylah performing well. And then I got Jung. Then I got Pliskova, like we said, playing well across 2 continents. And then I've also got Victoria Azarenka. So good to see her still playing. Like you said, one of the nicest players on the tour. And, she's just so impressive. So I hope she keeps on for a while, because even at, I think, like 34, 35, she's still one of the best athletes on the WTA tour, I think.
I agree. I think Azarenka could also be in my list. I gave a nod to Svitolina. She's back this week. She won today or yesterday against her fellow compatriot. I'm forgetting her name. But
what's that? Kalinina, I think.
Kalinina. Yeah, I wanted to say Kalinskaya, but Kalinina. And I think she, overall, since her return from pregnancy, has been such a threat. And, we talked about her in Australia being a big threat and unfortunately having to pull out with injury. So I'm glad to see her back. And I do think she's going to maintain a good level and keep pushing on. So gave her a little nod. Krejcikova is a defending champion this week in Dubai. So one to watch. Again, conditions I think are good for her. Likes a slightly slower outdoor hard court with kind of tricky conditions, so could have a decent run. Do I see her defending the title? Probably not. Noskova did decently well in this 1,000 event. Kind of had a question mark loss, I think, in the second or third round. But again, kind of continues to be a name where I'm like, she's dangerous, and I wouldn't want her in my part of the draw. Zhang is still in there, but took a loss this week was it against Fernandez?
That was against Fernandez.
Yeah. So yeah, Fernandez played out of her skin. Really good match. Collins was in my list last week. She had another good couple of performances. Or 2 weeks ago, I think, was when we last recorded the pod. So she had a couple good performances last week. I couldn't tell whether her match got cancelled or whether she retired in Dubai. Not sure if she's going to be competing. But as you say, the retirement announcement came. Collins has a form of like an illness. It's like not arthritis, but something, rheumatoid arthritis is what she has. So finally got that diagnosis. And alongside that, she also has endometriosis, which is something that women get as it relates to that period, very painful period cramps, just really impacting her ability to play. So I think she talked about, kind of having a sense of relief by getting that diagnosis from the rheumatoid arthritis. It's something a couple female players, pro touring players have. It's really difficult to manage. It often results in just having lingering aches and pains, and just in general struggling with injury. We know that Collins struggled with her neck for a long time. And so I can kind of see why she's feeling tired and feeling like she just wants to enjoy life. But she's one of my favorite players to watch. She's just so much fun. And I really hope she gets another couple good runs, some warm receptions at the tournaments in the US, especially in Miami, since it's kind of more of a home tournament for her. So if you guys plan to attend, give her a cheer. And then the rest of our kind of top 5, top 6 look pretty similar. I have Pliskova at number 5 because I just think she's been on such a good run. Goff moved down 2 spots because she had an early exit in this Masters event. That sort of top big 3 again is shaping up between Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Rybakina. Sabalenka didn't play this past week. The rumor is that she got some time off to have some veneers put in. So she's back.
I'll be honest, with the way the WTA schedule is set up, it might be even better for Sabalenka that she didn't play because, like, as there's like 3 Masters, you might as well like skip one and be able to perform well at the other 3,
Yeah. I don't blame her. Like, also, when else is she meant to fit a procedure like that in? You know?
Yeah.
You need if you're getting full-on veneers, it's a couple weeks till you're feeling good. So not surprised that we didn't see her. Curious that she gets a medical exemption for that, but either that or she took the hit and took the fine and didn't care. I don't know, but we should see her back in action again this week. Yeah,
I'll be excited to see it.
A couple other pieces to run through quickly because I know we're pushing up on time here. Upcoming for the WTA, we've got this second Masters 1000 tournament that's happening in Dubai. As I mentioned, Krejcikova is the defending champion and Sabalenka is back in the draw. So we've got, as of today, as of filming, which is Monday, we've got a full draw with the top players competing. So that should be interesting. And then on the ATP side, we've got a 500 event in Rio in Brazil where Alcaraz is the top seed. He's looking for better performance there. A little bit of pressure on his end, but should be interesting to see against how he does with a field that has names like Cam Norrie, Jarry, Cerundolo, Baez, Jarry, and Feast all in action. And then we've also got a Qatar 250, Rublev and Khachanov are the top seeds there. And then in Mexico, we've also got a 250 where Zverev and Tsitsipas are in action. So a couple good events.
Yeah, will be interesting. I think Rio Open, the big thing is can Alcaraz find his form? I think that it's one of the biggest things on the men's side. And then also, Zverev and Tsitsipas playing some top players. So we'll see how it all happens. Last year, Norrie beat Alcaraz in the final, but Norrie is not in good form. I see Alcaraz winning that tournament. I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised by the names in that draw for an ATP 500, but so I think Alcaraz will have a good chance at it. But we said the same thing about Buenos Aires, but we'll see how Alcaraz can do, and hopefully he can use that to get some confidence and pick up his form.
Yeah, I think a couple players are sort of mapping out that season. There is going to be, I believe, a 500 event in the Middle East coming up next week. So that might be why some of those players chose Qatar. And then there's the 250 event in Mexico, which is followed the following week, I think, by another 500 tournament.
Yeah, Acapulco,
is that correct?
I think.
Acapulco. So I think some players are kind of hedging their bets on like what tournament they want to play based off of the location that they were in. And obviously Rio, I think a lot of players came from Buenos Aires to Rio because that made sense for them. So I agree with you. It's not a very stacked 500 draw. A little disappointing. So big opportunity there for big point haul, for maybe some names in here that we wouldn't expect to have deep runs at a 500. You know, and Artur Fils is going to be eyeing this up like, let me in.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to be interested to see, you know, who performs well. Even a quarter or semifinal run for some of these names will be big when it comes to ranking points. So interested to see how those pan out. And then we've got, those 2 500 tournaments happening next week, which will finish things off before they head to Palm Springs. So, I think the next 2 weeks are kind of going to be crucial in figuring out who are kind of really the informed guys to beat in Palm Springs. And I'm also curious to see if Medvedev is going to show up next week at any point before competing in Palm Springs.
Yeah, hopefully he's healthy. I love this part of the season with all parts of the world having different events across all different kinds of surfaces. So it'll be interesting to see how it kind of all irons out.
So culture piece, guys, there's always a lot to talk about in culture. We've already talked at you for an hour 20, so we'll keep things short and sweet today. The news here, or kind of nugget to take away, is that Sakkari has split with her longtime coach, Tom Hill. They've worked together for several years, one of the longest partnerships on both the WTA and ATP tour, really. And it's interesting because we talked about it earlier this season. After Sakkari had an early round loss in Australia, you and I chatted about, you know, is this relationship with Tom sustainable? When is she going to mix things up and try something new? Because it's not like, oh, it's just been a couple of random slams here and there. This has been a consistent issue for her. Yes, she did get a Masters title last year, but again, a very depleted WTA field post US Open. So I don't want to put asterisks next to titles, but that one does have an asterisk for me. Really poor performances in Cancun. And again, just kind of continuing this like disappointing form at the start of this year, lost early last week as well. And I think that it's a little bit overdue. So I'm glad to see the change happen. I don't ever want to see someone lose their job. So sorry, Tom, but I do think you can get stagnant with hearing the same voice over and over. I felt like we saw clips of it at Break Point that their relationship at times can feel pretty like negative, or like negative feedback, not from Tom's side, but like that dynamic is negative. I observed it in Cancun, where she just can have a very negative attitude towards herself on the court. And it kind of aligns with her, like, you know, personalities and the issues that she's highlighted in terms of her own games and like what she's admitted to. So I'm curious to see, you know, who she's going to partner up with. We've now seen, you know, Pegula and her and players in the top 10 that are splitting with their coach. So I'm curious to see who's next for her. And it's also tough to break up at this part of the season and not have the next thing lined up. You know, they've obviously been through preseason together and kind of probably had a plan. So curious to see what's going to happen next for her.
Yeah, well, changes for coaches at the start of seasons are always interesting. I remember Sinner a couple of years ago, he just fired his whole coaching team that worked for him with a couple of years and then took on Darren Cahill to his box. So, you know, it can have some good success, but often it is a bit strange. We'll see how Pegula and Sakkari do. I think they ended on good terms, though. On Instagram, it seems like they were giving very warm comments towards each other, which is very good. I personally think it was a very special dynamic that they had for a long time, at least in 2022, getting her to some slam semis and being consistent at that point. And, you know, I ganked to world number 3. But, yeah, I felt like at points she's just been stagnating and not making a whole lot of progress. And I do agree that oftentimes she is being kind of yelling at him negative things that she should improve really within herself. And it just feels like it's a negative thing that we don't really want to see in a coaching dynamic. So, we'll see how Sakkari keeps keeps going from here, because she has been losing to like mostly top players since like Guadalajara, since like the event there.
Right.
But that being said, she should be a top 10, top 5 player. She should be able to beat those players. Like
Right.
she should be with those players. And yeah, with her recent losses against players that are outside the top 10, outside top 15, it was time for a change. Glad to see her doing it. She should be higher up, but you know, she still got time, and I hope that she can get back to where she was in 2021, 2022, because you know, she's such an easy to watch player. She's so easy to root for, and you know, we hope that she can get back there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where she goes from here and who she chooses next for the coach.
For sure.
All right. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys watching the Tennis 360 podcast, like always. Guys, don't forget to share around the podcast if you are enjoying it, all of that stuff. We're on Spotify, YouTube, all of your podcasting platforms. And don't forget to like the video as well if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe as well. I've been Anthony Hirsch.
I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
See you guys at the next one.